Hi, everybody. It's Liz. How's everybody doing? All right. If you are not named Tayari Jones, please do not send me an invite or a request to join, because there's only one person we're going to be talking to, and here she is. We're getting there. No. Tayari, I see you. Come on now. Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are about to talk to Tayari Jones about American marriage. Raha! I'm so excited. Why am I having trouble finding you? I saw your name, my dear. I haven't done this in a while, so hang on now. Here we go. Send request. Okay. Hi, everyone. How's everybody been? Hello, hello. Look at all those hearts. Let's go back down. So do not send me requests, my love, unless you are named Tayari Jones. And we all know that there's only one person in the world who's named that. Hi, family. How's everybody been? Okay. You got a tattoo on your back that said Attraversiamo. Wow. Good for you. Hello, Finland. Just waiting for Ms. Jones. Hi, everybody. Hi, UK. Hi, Melbourne. Hi, Melbs. Okay, wait. She's saying help. Let me try this again. All right. I sent you a request, my love. Did you not see it? Let's see. It's always something. Let me try again. I'm going to send you another request. I don't know why I'm shouting as if you're in another room. Okay, I just sent you another request, darling. View request. Oh, here we go. Here we go. She's coming in hot. There she is.
So I was like, okay, what's happening?
Hey, hello, hello, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I am so well. I love your look.
Oh, thank you.
I like last time we spoke, we were doing a sort of more elegant thing. And this is a more of like a sexy daytime look that you've got going on.
It's like I'm home. Spring has happened here in Atlanta in the last 2 days. It went from like cold to beautiful.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Hello, hello, hello. Everybody, please send up a just big pile of hearts to Tayari to welcome here. She's like, okay, look at all that. That's all for you. You see all that? We all love you.
Thank you, everybody. I'll take every heart.
And everybody, I'm just going to give you an introduction. We are here today to discuss this extraordinary novel, An American Marriage. I'm so excited to talk to you about this in depth. I just spoke to you a month ago about all your books, but this time we get to do a deep dive into this one. And I am going to now turn off the comments so that people can look at your beautiful face without seeing their names scrolling across it. But we'll step back in the moment. Hang on, comments off. Goodbye, everybody. Okay. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, so you're in Atlanta.
I am my natural habitat.
That's it, as is one of my questions, but I'm not going to start with that. I am going to start just with a summary of the novel for those of you who haven't read it. There will be spoilers. We will be discussing in detail everything that happens in this book. I would actually suggest, if you haven't read it, do not watch. Because you're not going to want to have it ruined. You want to have the experience of reading this book, or save this for later, because I'll put it on my feed and you can watch it later. Or you can watch. Why am I trying to micromanage everybody's lives? Do whatever you want.
You know, some people don't mind spoilers.
That's true. That's true. Some people actually like to read the last page first, but those people are
because they don't
monsters.
Like the suspense. They just want to know. They want to read the last page, make sure everyone is alive. And
they're control freaks. They can't handle not being in control of what's going on. So this is a novel that is set in Atlanta, as all of your books have been, and it's a contemporary drama. It's a literary masterpiece. It is the devastating and tragic and rich and complex story of a young Black couple in Atlanta who have every reason to think at the beginning of their marriage that they are on their way up. Two very young, beautiful, ambitious, successful people. One who the man is works in finance, the woman is an artist. They're hot for each other. Their marriage is certainly not perfect, as we will discuss, but they just have what every young couple deserves to have, which is all the best hope for the future. Those hopes are dashed when Roy, the husband, is accused, arrested, and convicted of a violent crime against a woman that he did not commit, and sentenced to 12 years in prison. It ends up being 5 years, but during that time, they cannot keep their marriage together, despite the nobility that they both felt at the beginning of a certainty that could happen. It all falls apart for very human and very understandable reasons. And the book is, it is so devastating, and it is so beautiful, and it is so honest, and it is so true. And it's so big. You took on such a big story. And I want to start with how you chose this as a topic. I was wondering if you could tell everybody about the research that you were doing at Harvard, and your fascination, your horror about the American penitentiary system, and how it led to this novel, and why you decided to write it as a novel and not as nonfiction, because you certainly did enough research that you could have written a great vast treatise on this, but instead you tell it through the lens of these two unforgettable characters. So let's just start at the very beginning. Also, hello, it's so good to see you.
Well, thank you for inviting me here to the Onward Book Club. I love the Onward Book Club, and I just appreciate your kind words. But okay, how this book came to be. An American Marriage is my fourth novel. And for my first three novels, I had really written a lot about families that look a lot like my own family. And I was kind of doing it in a resistance in a way, because I feel like as a Black writer, like everyone expects you to write a book about racism. Like they think your life is about racism. And I felt that other people write books about their families, and that's considered enough story. So I'm going to write a book about my family. But then after a while, I started thinking that I was letting other people's expectations control me if I'm not going to write a book that engages these social issues because other people want me to. Right. That I have to write the story that comes to me. And my third novel, Silver Sparrow, almost wasn't published. I had like an incredible lucky break, and it was published, and it did well enough that my fourth book, I had a contract for it before I wrote it. And I felt like, okay, why have I been given this platform where I can write whatever book I want? Mm-hmm. And I said, it's because I'm meant to do something with it. And I decided that I was going to address the topic of incarceration, just because incarceration has always been kind of like the boogeyman in my community, that it could come out of nowhere and take someone. So mm-hmm. I went to Harvard to do research on the topic, and I did all this research, and I felt like I was angry, I was outraged, I was a lot of things. But what I wasn't was inspired. I wasn't mm-hmm. inspired. I was just mad. And mad does not a novel make. Novels, for me, come from a place of moral ambiguity. And so when I was trying to write about wrongful imprisonment, I didn't have ambiguity. They call it wrongful imprisonment because it's wrong. There's nothing else to say. Right. It's wrong to imprison innocent people. So I had to think, well, where's the story? Where is the thing where I'm torn and I don't know which way to go? And I've told this story before, maybe some people have heard it, but I was in the mall and I overheard a couple arguing. I heard the woman say to the man, she said, Roy, you know you wouldn't have waited on me for 7 years. And he said to her, I don't know what you're talking about. This wouldn't have happened to you in the first place. Mm. And that's where I got the idea to write about this marriage, this couple, and the expectations of men and women, and what does it mean to be, as the kids say, ride or die? What is it? Is it more selfish not to wait on your man, or is it more selfish for him to want you to wait? And those are questions I didn't know the answer to. And when I don't know the answer, then I'm able to enter a novel. I didn't write nonfiction because that's not what I do. I just don't do that.
Do you never do it? Do you not write essays or?
I only write essays.
Okay.
Under very, very, very specific circumstances. Like when Toni Morrison passed away, I was asked to write an essay on that. And I felt like as a gesture of respect to her, I will write an essay. Or this summer during Black Lives Matter, I wrote a couple of essays because I felt like my fiction wasn't meeting the urgent needs. But I don't write nonfiction on purpose, no.
Okay, on purpose. Okay. Only under extraordinary circumstances. You mentioned moral ambiguity. Your novels, you are the queen of putting your poor, long-suffering characters into the most incredibly impossible dilemmas. And you love your characters. I can feel that you love your characters, but you also have a rare understanding of the cosmic predicaments that people end up in, where in the pure definition of a dilemma, each outcome is equally awful. And you do this again and again in your novels. And I was wondering if you could just speak about dilemma, because it seems to just be a realm that you play in a lot, to a degree further than most novelists that I know will take it. You put your people into very difficult webs, and then I never know whether, as I'm reading you, I'm like, are you trying to figure out how you're going to get out of this as a storyteller, or how they're going to get out of it as characters? But you put them in challenges, and by doing so, I think you put yourself as a writer in challenges as well. So just discuss what moral ambiguity, and particularly what dilemma it means to you.
Well, the dilemmas in this particular novel, I was determined to get the people out. I was determined to find a way forward for them with some kind of hope, because when I write a novel, I imagine that it's being read by people who are experiencing what I'm writing about.
Right.
And if I could not, just in the safety of my own home, in the privacy of my imagination, if I could not figure out a way forward for them, what would someone feel like if they were experiencing that and reading a novel?
Right.
I never want to leave someone feeling worse when they read my book than they started, particularly if they're going through this horrible situation of being wrongfully incarcerated or loving someone who's incarcerated. I needed to find a way forward. And I knew this. I knew the way forward wasn't he gets his job back, or, he somehow restored his original space, because that's not going to happen. So that's not even helpful to someone who's experiencing it, to give them a way out that is something that would never happen. So I had to really get in there and how to be fair to everyone, because I didn't want a way out where a man's road forward is by squashing a woman's dreams, by gratefully receiving her sacrifice. That's not a way forward for everyone. So I had to find a way forward for all three of these people. And it came when Roy says to Celestial, "But I'm innocent." And she says back, "I'm innocent too." And that's what I had to keep in my mind as I was working it out for them.
That's my favorite line in the book. I think it's the depth of that moment is so powerful. And I want to go back to innocence, but I also want to talk about even before this horrible incident happens. First of all, I want to talk about the pace. Let's talk about the pacing of this book, about the craft of how you put it together, because it's so beautifully concocted. It's got a sort of Rubik's Cube like puzzle to it. As a writer, when I look at it, I'm like, how did she piece this together? Because it's got these different beats that are they're very much their own thing. The first 41 pages of the book, before, what you cover in 41 pages before Roy is dragged out of his bed where he is sleeping next to his loving wife and wrongfully arrested, and his life is destroyed, never to be, as you said, never to be restored, to what it was. That the life that he had had before that ends in that moment. And so does the life that Celestial had before that. But in the 41 pages before you get to that, you pack so much information in there about who these two people are. And we already know them so intimately and so deeply. And then the next beat of the book is all letters that are exchanged in prison. And that moves very swiftly too. And then when he gets out of jail after 5 years, there's the third piece of the book, which is what in the world is going to happen to these two people now who cannot have what they were, cannot be what they were, and cannot have what they had. But in that first 41 pages, long before there's the dilemma of the arrest and the incarnation and what's going to happen to our marriage now, you've already established that these two might or might not work. You know, you don't, it's not like we read this and we think these two are just, they've got it all sewn up. They are meant to be together. This is a, you know, this is going to be a tight, there's ambivalence already happening. He's hasn't completely decided that he's done pursuing other women, as we can see even on their first anniversary. He's keeping that door open a little bit and giving himself, I think, a lot of forgiveness and a lot of permission about that. And she is deeply ambivalent about being a wife at all. She's a modern woman. She's a creator. She's bohemian. She's uncertain about these roles. And so, and they're both keeping really big secrets from each other. There's a level of intimacy that they have that is very real. And then there's a level of intimacy that they lack. And one of the definitions that I've heard of intimacy is intimacy, that you let somebody see, right? You let somebody see into you, and neither one of them has fully allowed the other one to see in. They're holding some cards behind their back. So that's what I wanted to talk about first, is how you found those characters. You know, why she's an artist, why the class difference between them, that he comes from poverty, that she comes from affluence, and why was it so important to you to make that marriage have its cracks even before this disaster strikes?
Well, one reason why their marriage had cracks is because I like to write characters who feel like they live in the world, not people who feel like they live in the book.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when you say this book is going to be about a man who's wrongfully in prison, there's an expectation that the characters will be like, do you ever watch Dateline? You can tell me. It's just us and a few, you know, thousands of our closest friends. I watch Dateline, and on Dateline, it
Right.
always says they had everything. The neighborhood was perfect.
Right.
Like, you have to earn, they in Dateline, they earn your sympathy through the perfection.
That's it.
And
you're too good a writer to do that. Yeah, exactly.
And I thought, no, you don't have to be perfect.
Right.
You don't have to be a couple that is meant to be for the fact that your husband is wrongfully incarcerated to be a tragedy, for it to be an injustice. Because in that case, none of us, no one then could be victimized by society, because right. we could just point out one flaw, like, well, he was a little bit of a cheater, so who cares that your husband was wrongfully in prison? I needed the people to feel real, because that is a kind of, you know, what they call respectability politics, that you right. make your characters worthy of sympathy, or make a real life person worthy of sympathy by kind of putting them in a soft focus. But I wanted them to be a real couple. Also, right. nobody wants to read 41 pages about a couple where everything's working. Nobody right. does. No, I mean, happy couples are only interesting to each other. Like, if your friend's relationship is going great, you're not like, girl, tell me more. He brought you flowers? Really? He remembers your birthday? That's not interesting. But like, if you like, I think my husband is a little bit of a cheater. You're like, tell me all about it. What do you do? So the story has to be interesting enough. Like, that's the thing. I couldn't let the fact that I knew a wrongful conviction was coming around the corner make it where the story wouldn't be interesting.
Right.
And also, right. they don't know he's going to be wrongfully convicted. Therefore, they think they have the right to fight. They think they have the right to disagree. She thinks she has the right to send him out the room, because mm-hmm. she doesn't know that she's in a story about a wrongful conviction.
Yeah, this is not a Sidney Poitier movie.
Yes.
You know, like these. Yeah, I love that about it. And I love that because you also. I want to talk to you about how people read Celestial, especially. I think you told a story, or I heard a bit of a story about a woman at a bookstore getting really angry at you.
Oh, that woman who tried to attack me at the bookstore. It was a book festival.
Yes.
With the cane.
Yes. Could you tell that story? Because and let's just back it up by saying, and again, here's a spoiler alert, but the marriage, you know, Celestial does not remain faithful to her husband when he's in prison. And she does a whole bunch of stuff that is not in keeping with our very narrow.
It's not a whole bunch of stuff. It's one stuff.
No, wait a minute. No. Other stuff too. She doesn't go visit him.
But no. She visits him. They were married 18
Yeah.
months, and she visits him for 3 years, twice as long as she was married to him.
Right. But he has objections to this. He's like, there are people, he keeps writing her letters and said, there are women whose men have been in this jail for 20 years and they come every weekend. How come you don't come and see
it's true.
me?
But it's not that she doesn't visit him.
Right.
It's not that she abandons him. He processes it this way because I do think that with women, particularly with Black women, if you don't do everything, people treat you like you did nothing.
That's right. That's
so
right.
She visited him.
When I said she does a bunch of things, I meant through his point of view.
Okay.
She does a bunch of things that make her fall short as the perfect wife to a guy who's been wrongfully incarcerated in prison.
Yes, because she doesn't know she's in a book.
Right.
Right. Yes.
Right.
She doesn't behave like a person who's in a book.
Right.
And that's the thing. He gets, and so that's one thing I like to call the tyranny of genre expectation.
Yeah.
That it's very disconcerting to readers to read because she does live in a book, even though she doesn't know it. The reader knows she lives in a book, and they expect her to follow the script of a book,
right.
Which is actually not even the real life script. I mean, incarceration, people's marriages break up just over distance, just because he works too much and he's not home. And incarceration is the ultimate he's not home.
Right.
But people get really mad. Some people, like this lady that was going to rush the stage on me in Baltimore and hit me with her cane because she felt, she was like, you stand by your man. You stand by your man. She was really mad. And then the moderator said, well, ma'am, these people are fictional. And she pointed that cane at me and said, I can tell what she thinks. And I think in some ways she was right. I was really looking at this idea that women, particularly Black women, are meant to kind of be a monument of chastity, a monument to her husband's suffering. Like, it's not like she could abstain him out of prison. Right. Like in lieu of an appeal, she could abstain, and then the result of her abstention would be his release.
Right.
But there's just this kind of need to say that she must suffer as much as he is, or something.
Meanwhile, he wasn't even particularly abstaining in the first year and a half of their marriage.
Yeah, he wasn't. He really wasn't. But even if he was, like I said, it's the question,
right?
Is it reasonable are you a selfish person to ask someone else to do that? Is it, like, I like to just kind of question that whole idea. Yeah. Is it reasonable? And also, is that the only way that she can be supportive to him? Because she says, I can't go on as your wife. Right. I can go on in these different capacities, but I don't feel that I never got an opportunity to be a wife. And, he got mad. Ooh. He sure enough got mad. But I think that, and that is also, when you think about their relationship, she has work-life questions, just like everyone else. Right. Like, how much, because the work-life balance is how much of your life do you dedicate to your marriage? How much do you dedicate to the other things you want to do? It's just that her marriage, because of these situations, has a giant need. And like, usually when a woman is saying how much of your life you dedicate to your marriage, how much to your dreams, everyone's like, go dream, girl. But usually it's because the man is not in trouble.
Right. Right.
And also very seldom are these stories about Black women. When Black women are in novels where they leave a marriage, it's usually a novel where the marriage is a nightmare. She's running for her life. It's almost like if she isn't running for her life, she has no right to her own life.
That's such a good point. Yeah. And she's an artist. Which I want to talk about that choice that you made. As myself, as a woman who has shown herself to not be super great at marriage, and who tends to choose dream and the creativity over a more traditional standard of what might be expected of a woman, my heart went out to her because she's not just an artist, she's a very good artist. And while her husband is in prison, she becomes a very successful artist and a successful businesswoman, all through her creativity. Why was it important to you that she be a creator?
Well, I'm an artist, and I was interested in the question of a woman as an artist, and I chose her medium to be dolls because as a woman writer, have you had this experience where you say someone, I've written a novel, like I was on an airplane, I was sitting up there in first class feeling fancy, having a glass of wine, just feeling fancy. And the man next to me said, "Oh, what do you do?" Which I took to mean, "How did someone like you end up here in first class?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a writer." He said, "Oh, have you written a romance novel?" And I said,
No.
"No, I've written a novel about the collateral effects of wrongful imprisonment." And he said, "Oh, okay, I'll buy that for my wife." He could not imagine that anything I had done could have relevance to him. And I feel like with Celestial as a doll maker, that's the epitome of that. She's this very serious artist, but dolls are regarded as toys for girls. And so this kind of struggle for legitimacy. See, I had to be interested in her beyond her husband's situation. So I was interested in the way women as artists struggle to be seen, heard, and taken seriously. And then I was also interested in what I call the ethics of portrait making, because her dolls look like him.
Yes, I want to get into this. Go on, and then I've got a whole bunch of questions.
Okay, at first he's into it. He's like, "Yes, I'm her husband and her muse." He's into it. He's like totally into it. He's flattered by it. But then when her career is going up and he is in prison, he feels like, she's stealing my face to get famous. Like, it's really, I'm sure you know, people really regard it differently being the subject of your work before you're successful. Like if you're struggling writing some poems, people think it's adorable. But let's say that something happens and you make some money off of it, God forbid, they feel like they have a different feeling about being included. That's how I'll say that. Their feelings change.
Yeah, and I have to give it to Roy a little bit here too. Is when I read that scene about her being interviewed at the National Portrait Gallery, and she's unveiled a doll that she's made of Roy, and the doll, it's a baby doll modeled on his face when he was a baby, and it's in prison. It's a baby in prison clothes, which is of course a social statement that she's making in a very powerful piece of art. But there's something that landed on me a little bit like a punch in the gut, like, oh, that's gotta hurt, Roy, and she's not acknowledging his existence in that interview, or that she has a husband who's incarcerated. And I was thinking about how as artists, as creators, we do use the people around us. We use them as muses, we use them as characters, we use them as models. I've done it, and I've hurt people.
I'm doing it right now, actually.
Yeah. I've done it and I've hurt people. And I saw that. I saw the and I recognized it. It was the pain that I felt was like, it was a sort of game recognized game moment where it's like, I've used people who I love in order to make art out of them and to profit by it in ways that are perhaps not always at the highest regard for what they might think about that. And so I got that, but I also got the ruthlessness of the creative drive, which is, I will use whatever is in front of me to make my art. And in her life, what was in front of her was this. And
also though, it's complicated by the fact that she knows that as soon as she says her husband is in prison, that's it's kind of like what the ghetto Yoda says. As soon as she says
Walter's line.
That she'll become a stereotype to everyone, and she'll never be able to be anything else.
Yeah.
And she wants to be that. She wants that reserve to say, I care about prison, I care about this, but she doesn't want to be the prisoner's wife.
Yeah.
Because she'll never be able to come back from that. But no, he was mad. Woo, he was mad, and I get it. I get everybody's point of view. But I think he's mad, but he's mad at her because she's the one close by to be mad at. I think sometimes I made some mistake in the construction of this novel, because I think my insistence that this story be about the people and not the system, sometimes I feel like it made people forget the system, that I might have zoomed in too close.
I don't think so. I think if you've committed an error at all, it's being too good a novelist. But I don't think that that's the case. It's chilling. Watching what happens to Roy is absolutely devastating and chilling. And watching, I think one of the most devastating moments for me in it is you can only use the word naive assumption that because he's innocent, he's not going to go to jail. And they have that conversation at one point when he says to her, look, if this doesn't go the way we want it to go, when the trial's about to begin, he very nobly says to her, I want you to continue your life. I want you to move
Yeah,
on.
he
I
said,
want you
I don't want you to throw your
don't
life
wait
away.
for me. You know, I don't want
He
you to throw your
says,
life away.
no,
I mean,
this is going to be okay.
and she's like, no, but you're, you know, she's in this sense of like, and she has had a slightly more sheltered life than he has, but she sort of believes that the right thing, that wrong thing won't happen to them because it just can't, because it's not true. And we know as readers, and also we know as Americans reading it, that her innocence there is about to be shattered.
He says innocence is being unable to anticipate the pain of the future.
Yeah. That he's going to be seen as a black man on the stand, and that's it. He's going to jail, and the impact is huge. I don't think that you have failed at all in this.
And also she doesn't know how to defend him, because if she comes off as very polished, people think she's insincere. But
Right.
were she to come off as overly vernacular or too around the way, people would say that's not credible. When I wrote that part, when she said, I knew I had failed him, you know, because I was, you know, my uncle said, now is not the time to be articulate. Now is the time, no filter, all heart. But all her life, she's been trained that to be respected, she has to, you know, sit up straight, speak
Right.
proper English, all of this. When I wrote that, it was when George Zimmerman was on trial for killing Trayvon Martin. And you may
Yeah.
not remember this, but Trayvon Martin had a girlfriend who spoke, and she was working class young lady from Miami. And, you know, the way she dressed, the way she carried herself, people were saying, well, she's not credible. Look at how she speaks. Look at how she
Right.
talks. So I felt like Celestial didn't know how to thread that needle between being proper enough to be respected, yet to seem genuine. And
But
couldn't do
isn't
it.
that the dilemma? Isn't that the dilemma of Black women, period? Like how am I going to be allowed to be that is okay? If I'm like, there is no, you know, we saw this, you know, we see this whenever a Black woman is in the public eye, that you're too much of this, you're not enough of that, you know, and there's, how are you supposed, what is the right answer here?
Yeah, there's no
You know?
neutral presentation.
Yes.
Everything about you makes a statement, and
Yeah.
you're constantly trying to navigate and tweak the statement this way, tweak the statement that way. But you can't stop trying. And it's
Yeah.
just a thing.
Yeah.
See, that's the technical term for it. It's a thing.
Is that what
Yeah.
it's called? Thank you for that. I was about to look it up because I wanted to make sure that I got it right. Let's talk about Andre for a minute. He's the other third character in this love triangle, and he's similar to a character that you write about. By the way, guys, if you haven't read Silver Sparrow, if you haven't read Leaving Atlanta, and for those of you who are just tuning in, I keep forgetting to remind everyone that who we're talking to. We're talking to Tayari Jones, the author of An American Marriage, one of the best novels ever. I actually looked in my journal, and this has nothing to do with our interview, except that it's kind of wild. I read this for the first time exactly a year ago today. I finished it. And I was writing about it, and I was saying this book is so extraordinarily good. And I posted about it a year ago today. And here we are a year later discussing it.
Meant to be.
It's meant to be. But anyway, let's talk about Andre, because Andre also reminds me of a character in Silver Sparrow who's another best friend of a man who is hopelessly in love with a woman who is in love with the man who is the best friend, and who.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to know where in your life you had this situation that you keep going back to these loyal, quietly in love with, hopelessly in love with the woman he can't have man. And what is it about that story that compelled you to create that character twice? Not to say that they're exactly the same, but they're similar.
But differently, because
Yeah.
Silver Sparrow, Raleigh is James's best friend and wingman. He's facilitating James's bigamy.
That's true.
In An American Marriage, Andre was her friend first.
And he also isn't facilitating it. There's a point in the book where he says, because he was her friend and he was in love with her from the very beginning.
They were babies.
When they were babies, and
Two babies taking a bath together in the sink.
But they also did a little more of that. They did more in high school than just be two babies taking a bath together. And she is the love of his life. And
okay, Miss Close Reader, you may not have noticed this. When Celestial and Andre went to the prom,
yes,
they took a limousine from Witherspoon Sedans, who live in Silver Sparrow.
furious that I didn't notice that. I'm furious that oh,
I just
damn
wanted to
it.
say that.
Fail. Come on, Liz. Read better.
But yes, Andre was her friend. I mean, it's so funny. I'm adapting this. I'm writing a teleplay for it. And one of the things that in the teleplay, Roy says to Andre, "Are you saying this to me as her best friend or my best man?" And he says to them, "Don't you understand they're one and the same?" Which turns out not to be true. But he has divided loyalty because he is close to both of them.
Yeah. Yeah. But he's also not, there's a point where when Roy comes in where he says, I wasn't about to give him the playbook, you know, because Roy was asking like, how do I get with your friend? And he's like, look, I'm not going to block it, but I'm not going to help either.
I'm not going to facilitate it. But that also wasn't just him being in love with her. Roy was really trifling in college. So that was also him looking out for her. But he said, I wasn't going to give him the roadmap to her center.
I always wanted, oh, that's such a beautiful line. I always wanted Celestial and Andre to end up together. And I just felt like, I just wanted it for him, you know. I just thought he had carried that torch for so long, and you want to see that person get the love of their life, and
he's the boy next door. Like some people get so mad at Dre. Some people, they get really mad at Dre, and I say, you know, there is no way. What is the way forward for Celestial? Because I thought about her meeting another man, like a whole different man, but then I thought people would say, who is this stranger coming in disrupting this? But then I thought, Dre, he's the boy next door. If you're an American, you know why they put boys next door? So you can marry them. That's the whole reason they live over there. And so I thought, well, okay, this way she can have a man who has the stamp of approval of the culture. But then people say he was just laying in wait. I said, like, what, you think Andre sent Roy to prison? Like, I felt like I don't know how. I couldn't find a way forward for her, and I actually like them together. I do think they're good. I think they're a good match.
It's a better match. Yeah.
You know how the old people say, I don't know where you said you grew up in New York, right? And
no, I grew up in Connecticut.
Same thing.
Yeah.
To someone who lives in Georgia, I'm like, same thing.
Yeah. You're correct about that.
They're evenly yoked, as we say here in Georgia. They're evenly yoked.
Nice. But what were you going to say? That they were evenly yoked? Yes,
they're evenly yoked.
I thought you meant that Connecticut and New York were evenly yoked, and that is also true.
Well, Connecticut and New York, that's the same thing. I mean, it's all northern. It's all super northern.
Okay, can we talk about Atlanta? Can we talk about Atlanta as a recurring character in your book and in your life? I associate you as a writer of Atlanta the way I associate Jesmyn Ward as a writer of Mississippi. You know, there's something that you know about Atlanta that you can get into depth. And there's a line in the book. Sometimes when people write about a place with so much intimacy, it makes me feel a sense of longing that I wish I knew this place as well as this writer knows this place and what this code is and what's being said here. There's a line in the book where Roy says about Celestial, she was from Atlanta, but I was of it. And that was a line where I was like, I wish I knew what that meant, because I feel like there's layers, and I feel like somebody from Atlanta would know exactly what that means. So can you break that down for us? And can you also say what it is that you love about your hometown?
Yeah, she's from Atlanta. She's like me. I'm totally from Atlanta. And I think that because I'm from Atlanta, I'm not, like, Roy is really interested in being archetypally an ATLian. Like, that's his thing. Like, he's, you know, upwardly mobile. He drives the right car. He's married the right woman. He is busy being a Black Atlantan. He gets up every day and, like, it's just an Atlanta thing, a cup of coffee to drink, but she's just from there. So she wears it lightly because she was born here. She knows this place. And that's the difference. He's interested in, he loves telling people he tells people he's from Atlanta. He's from Louisiana. He just lives here. He's not from here. That's something I'm so horrible. I'm always telling people, you're not from here. You just live here. That's the only time. Other time, I'm a perfectly nice person. That's the only time I get a little like.
I want to ask you about.
Wait, I have something I want to ask you. Don't go anywhere. 1 second. Just take 1 second.
I'm not going anywhere. This is it. This is a good moment for me to talk to myself, which is what I've mostly been doing during the pandemic anyway.
Where you're from? Do you have these things that come on trees?
I've seen them.
They're everywhere in Atlanta. I have a northern friend, and she had never seen them before. And I wanted to know
I might have seen them in my travels.
What do they call them where you're from?
I don't. Oh, wait a minute. The devil's eggs. The devil. Something about the devil's testicles. I don't know.
Okay, just wondering. Never mind.
Why? What do they call them where you're from?
Not that. Okay, go ahead.
They don't call them the devil's testicles.
No. But they are everywhere. This is like.
What do you call them?
Well, I grew up calling these things. We call them cuckabugs.
Yeah, that's not what we call them.
Yeah, and
I think we call them devil's eggs.
I found out today that other people call them gumballs. People call them apparently devil's testicles. I didn't know, but I was just wondering because this is a very Atlanta nuisance.
We have horse chestnuts that do a similar thing.
We
So
don't have those.
there's so many questions I have for you. What do I want to ask
I
you?
know, I totally
want to ask you
with these
about.
things.
I want to ask you about. So you wrote this book, and then 2020 happened,
Yeah.
And there's a reading. So I read this book before. Not to say that Black Lives Matter began in 2020, but Black Lives Matter evolved in 2020 and became the leading story of 2020. And your book, I read it before that and I read it after that. And then in between this had happened. And I just wonder how differently are you finding people reading the book differently? Did it bring more people to the book? Do people have different questions now about it? How has it impacted the way that the book sits in our culture and is seen in our culture?
You know, actually, it wasn't Black Lives Matter that kind of disrupted readers' reaction to the book because, you know, the wrongful imprisonment, people, and also what I was saying too about expectation, because I'm a Black writer and we have this wrongful imprisonment, people always want to talk to me about the political implications of this book. Anywhere I go all over the world, that's the expectation. I think part of the reason why this book was translated so widely is that it was seen to be a book about racism, which is thought to be the Black writer's job. When my book was reviewed in Italy, the illustration accompanying the review was some people picking cotton. And even though this book is set in the 2000s, but there was that sense of that is the way it was situated. So that didn't really change much the way people,
good Lord,
the way people process the book. But the thing that really complicated people's read of the book was actually Me Too, because this story is intersectional and Roy is wrongfully accused of a sexual assault. And, you know, #BelieveWomen. So sometimes people were saying, well, what are you saying that, you know, he is wrongfully accused since we're in a moment where the whole idea is to believe.
Interesting.
And because people don't want to think intersectionally. But the thing I have to, there are a couple things, it depends on my mood. There are two ways that I can explain it. Right now I'm in a good mood. Is that one, Me Too is not really focused much on stranger attacks.
Right.
Like
it's workplace, mostly.
It's workplace. It's assault, you know, by people you know from college or people you know. Like, so if your boss flashes you at work, you know exactly who he is and what he did. Right. Or if you go out on a date with someone and you're assaulted, you know exactly who he is, what he did. But this is about stranger identification, which is an entirely different ball of wax. Right. Because eyewitnesses are the worst. They are the most compelling and they are so often strong and wrong. So something else we say here in Atlanta. So like what happened to Roy is that the police, he did a photo lineup and he was dressed differently. He was dressed in his regular clothes and everyone else in the photo lineup was dressed in prison clothes. And so, she had seen him before and she picked him. And then once in a photo lineup, you pick that person and you can tell that the police are happy. Like they're like, then your brain is like, oh, that's the person. It overrides you. And then you become convinced. Like you've seen women who the men has been exonerated by DNA, and the woman is like, I don't care, I know what I saw. But actually, you don't know what you saw.
Yeah.
And that's the real challenge here. Yeah, eyewitnesses are the worst. They're like your family.
The data on eyewitness.
Yeah, the worst.
Think
about a family
terrible.
reunion, how you and your cousins can never agree on what happened.
Yeah.
And y'all were all there.
Yeah. And you weren't in a traumatized state. Well, in my family reunions, often you were. In a different state. Now, is there a reason that you never mentioned the race of the woman who accused?
You know, I didn't want to. I really wanted this story to get on and be about Celestial Roy, their families. Yeah. And I felt like if I put too much time there, we could just kind of end up circling, relitigating Emmett Till.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wanted to get past. So I call myself kind of sliding by that. But when I got the first jacket copy, it was like Roy Hamilton, a very successful Black man wrongfully accused, it felt like this, of the rape of a white woman. Like it was like that.
It doesn't say that in the book.
I know. And so I was like, I never said that. And the people who wrote the copy were like, oh, yeah. But you know that if this goes to screen, I'm going to have to cast somebody.
Yeah, yeah. You won't be able to slide by quite so
easily. Toni Morrison has like one short story, and it's about these two girls who are living in a group home, and they're having they're like roommates, and they're having all these racial problems, but she never tells you which is a Black one and which is a white one. And if I teach that story, I can leave the room and let my students fight about it to the end of the class. Everyone is convinced they know which one is the Black one, which one is the white. So I was kind of doing that with this, but you can't play those games when you go to screen.
Yeah. And you said something in passing, and I wanted to go back and catch it and bring it back about, and I don't want to misquote you, but it was like, you know, it is allegedly the job of the Black writer to write about racism.
Yes.
Did you? And I did have a question for you about what, you know, I saw that during the Black Lives Matter revolution of last year, I saw that again and again, Black writers and intellectuals were being called to speak, and they were being called to answer for, and they were being called to explain, and they were being called, like, they were really, there was an assumption that, you know, you have to have, you know, we need you now, we need your voices on this. And I mean, I think we needed everybody's voices this year and all years on this, but I want you to hear what it's been like for you to thread that needle of being a Black woman, an author, wanting to live in creative freedom, I'm assuming, to have the full range of expression of how you want to spend your time. You spoke earlier about how you deliberately do not write nonfiction. You only write essays under duress or if Toni Morrison dies. And so I want to talk about it's a question I'm really interested in, is what is the obligation of an artist to society? What is the obligation of an artist to self? Anything that you want to say about that, I would be very interested to hear it.
Well, I feel like some people really enjoy talking about racism all the time. They enjoy it, they're good at it, and they should. I think it's the fact that it's kind of obligatory, and I don't mind being asked about it. But I did have a feeling like I didn't want to make the horrible deaths of this summer. How can I put this? I didn't think of it. I didn't want to feel like this was an opportunity for me.
Yeah.
That was really important. One, this is not an opportunity for me to get my byline in places I've never had a byline. I didn't want to do that. But also though, like I felt the same way when Morrison died. I said, you know, this isn't a time for me to get a byline. But then my dear friend Edwidge said, Tayari, she says, someone has to write this. It should be you. She said, this is our chance to write the remembrances of Ms. Morrison as we want her to be remembered. So I respect that you don't want this to be like your chance, but you need to. So I did that. So I wrote two, she wrote two, and that's all we did. But I do think that what bothers me is I am a novelist. And like when I was where was I? Was I in the UK? I was somewhere anyway. And everyone kept inviting. We got so many media hits, but everyone wanted me to talk about Trump because I'm Black, and they wanted me to say, as a Black person, Trump is horrible. And, you know, I could say that. As a Black person, Trump is horrible. But I felt like nobody wanted to talk about my book.
Right.
I'm willing to talk about politics, but I don't want that to be the only thing I'm asked to talk about. Let me talk about two things. Let me be on a panel where someone wants to talk about how I build character. Let me be on a panel where somebody wants to talk about the way I use dialogue. I want to do that too. I can do, you know, I'm a writer that can do both, I guess is what I'll say.
Got it. Yeah, something that whenever I talk to young writers, I tell them that I think it's hard enough making art. And I think sometimes I say, if you're feeling like the blockage that's coming and you're not able to create because you feel like your work is not impactful enough, or it's not going to change the world, like that's just another layer of difficulty that you've added to a job that's already really difficult. You know,
and the truth will change the world. Like when I was writing An American Marriage, I'm really happy that I wrote it before 2020, because I think it would have had so much more pressure on it to say, well, what are you trying to say about Black Lives Matter? But also, the truth is important. And if you really take a problem and mine the whole truth of it, you will come up with something radical, whether you knew it or not. I mean, there are people who say, every now and then people will say that An American Marriage is too much bedroom, not enough courtroom. You know, like it's not enough about, it's not, you know, it's not about the problem enough. But it is the only, but it is unique in that, in looking at this thing intersectionally and looking at the experience of women and the way, you know, the marriage, that is something, it is a true story and it's a true conflict. And in its truth, because it's not propagandizing about prison industrial complex, or then it ends up doing something important. Yeah. But I just was on, okay, this glare in my glasses driving me crazy. I was only trying to, I just wanted to be truthful, but it was harder though. I have to say that when I was writing this book and I was getting so much, I never had negative feedback from the people about whom I'm writing, with the sense that that in thinking about Celestial and her experience is somehow almost like cheating on the big problem. The big problem is incarceration. And to think about Celestial and her feelings is cheating on the big problem. I never had that. I had to be much braver writing this book than I had in my other books. That's such an incredible point. But the thing is, what you've done is that in these huge problems are human beings, you know, and what they're thinking about is the huge problem, but also their marriage, their money, their home, their work, you know, like, so I feel like the service, aside from just being an extraordinary novel on its own, is that people having read this, I don't think they can, I think when they look at a wrongfully incarcerated person now, I think that there's going to be a part of them that thinks, oh, right, because I read American Marriage, I know that this person has an entire extended family, and who are they, and what did this do to them, and what did this do to their parents, and what did this do to, you know, like, I don't think it's too much bedroom and not enough courtroom. I think it's just a little bit amount of bedroom. It's a little bit funny. This book is a little bit funny. I'm not saying it's like a knee slapper, but it is a little bit funny. No, you look. Margaret Atwood said the first job of a novelist is keep my interest. You know, I mean, that is our job. Like, and that is the job from page one, is you have to make me not be able to put this down. That's your job as a novelist. And when I talk about those first 41 pages of this book and the speed and the drama and the conflict that you introduce, it's, you know, I can't not read this. You know, are you saying you didn't think this book was a little bit funny? I think it was very funny. A little bit. Yes, I think it's a little bit. I think it's very funny. I think it's hilarious. Morrison, even Beloved is a little bit funny. I think that this book has been misshelved and it's a comedy. Just a little bit funny. Just a little bit. Yeah, because you're funny, so your voice is in there, and it's going to be in there. Okay, two people who I want to talk about. Two iconic people and what their impact on your life has been. If you do not mind telling stories about them, I think everyone would love to hear. One is, can you tell everybody about your relationship with Judy Blume? She saved me. Judy Blume saved me. I was out of print and I had no contract for Silver Sparrow. I had just been kicked to the curb because my numbers weren't good enough. I was so embarrassed, but I went to Key West for the Key West Literary Seminar, and the only reason I went is because there were hardly any Black people invited. And I was afraid that if I was a no-show, they would say, oh yeah, remember that time we tried to do diversity? She didn't even show up. So I felt like I'm doing this for all the young people to come behind me. I'm going to come and be embarrassed and give a reading and have no books to sign. So I went to give my reading, and on the table was like a little stack of books. And I asked the bookseller, oh, where did you get those? And he said, oh, I don't know. They came in this box. And he showed me a box, and it had my daddy's handwriting on it. And I was like,
was this Leaving Atlanta? Was that the book?
It was Leaving Atlanta. I said, oh, Daddy, what did you do? He said, well, I had a few copies at the house. And then I went over to your uncle's house because, he hadn't touched those books. He said, so don't let them sell those as used books because your uncle didn't use it. That's a new book, and you should get your full money. I said, okay. And he said, and you just sign those books, Buttercup. And when you finish, you say you sold out. You were so popular, you sold out. I said, okay. So I gave my little reading. I signed my couple books. And then a woman came and she said she wanted a book. And I said, oh, I must have sold out. And she said, oh, that's good because I heard that your books were out of print and you can't get a contract for your new book. I was so embarrassed. I was just so embarrassed. And she said, but I can help you. And she took me by the hand and she carried me through the crowd. She put my hand in the hand of a publisher. And I was embarrassed because this publisher had already rejected me because my sales numbers weren't good. And I was trying to get away, but the publisher said, well, I can see you're trying to get away, but before you leave, tell me, how do you know Judy? And I said, oh, I don't know anyone named Judy. And then she said, no, I mean, Judy Blume, who just introduced us. And I turned to say thank you, and she had vanished in a puff of smoke like a real life fairy godmother. This really happened to me.
Amazing. And doesn't everybody, all of you who are listening, isn't there a part of you that when you hear that, you just think, yes.
And then I had to go try to meet her again.
Yes, of course, that is Judy Blume. And sorry, what did you say?
I hatched a diabolical plan to meet her again and tell her thank you. I decided, I was teaching at Rutgers, and if you remember from Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret lived in New Jersey. And I said, I am going to write a letter to Rutgers, and we should give Judy Blume an honorary degree, and I'm going to be the one to present it to her. So I wrote my letter, and then about 6 months later, I got an email, and it was announcing Judy Blume will receive an honorary degree. So I was just waiting for my email to invite me to introduce her, and it never came. So then I called the people because I said, well, maybe they don't know my number. So I called the people, and they said, ma'am, these honorary degrees are in the works for years. Your letter had nothing to do with it. And I said, but, she took me by the hand, and they were like, that's nice, but no. But I kept calling, and they finally said, okay, you can come to the dinner, just come to the cocktail hour, say what you need to say, and go. You can come to the reception. They said, but you're not a guest. Do not eat anything. And I was like, I'm not starving. I'm not coming here to eat. So I said, well, that's great. So I got all dusted up, and I went. And I said my name at the door, and the woman, she had the little name tag for me. She was just like, she knew. And so I went.
Here's your badge that allows you to not eat.
And I explained the whole thing to Judy, and and she took a moment, and that shows me how generous she is. She probably helps a lot of people. But then she remembered, she congratulated me, and she said, well, what table are you seated at? And I said, oh, no, ma'am, I'm not here to eat anything. And I told them I wouldn't eat anything. And she said, oh, that's ridiculous. You will sit with me. And so I was seated at the head table. And so it was really great. I ate everything. It was fantastic.
I never knew the second half of that story. I love it. And then the second iconic person who has had an impact on your life and mine, and well, actually probably everybody's, but I want to hear specifically about the impact that she's had on your life is, of course, Oprah Winfrey.
Oh, the big O. Yes. Oh, yeah. You too. Yes. Well, you know the drill, right? You're minding your own business, just content and obscure. And then you get a phone call. For me, it was a block call. And I answered it because I'm nosy. I always answer block calls. I feel like somebody blocked that call for a reason. It's not usually a good reason, but it's a reason, and I want to know what it is. And so I said, hello. And she said, hey, girl, this is Oprah. I was driving. I had to pull over. I put my hazard lights on, and I was in Vegas. And if you know Vegas, there's the strip, and then there's the rest. I was in the rest. And I pulled over, and all these kind of like vagrants were like knocking on my window asking for money, and I was shooing them away, and Oprah's just talking, and I'm trying to listen, I'm trying to get it together. And this was a full 5 months before my book came out.
Wow.
So I had 5 months, because you have to sign the paperwork. I had the biggest secret in the world.
Wow. I want to just say, I was not in her book club. She changed my life because she had me on the show, but I was not in her book club. But so I'm loving this backstory of how the book club works. But go ahead.
And so I had this information. People would say, well, how are things going with the book? And I would say, I'm hopeful.
And you couldn't tell anybody? Did you tell anybody? You must have told tell one person.
If you had seen that non-disclosure agreement, but you know what? I told one person. My mentor that I met when I was a student at Spelman College in Atlanta, her name is Pearl Clegg, and she had been in Oprah's book club selection in the 90s. Wow. And I was like, Pearl, I have something to tell you. I figured she knew the drill because she had signed all the NDAs, and she was able to kind of talk to me about what to expect about having this big thing happen. And one of the things I came to realize, because I was freaking out, like Oprah Winfrey has literally put her name on my book. On my book is her name, Oprah. And I was anxious about it, but then in talking to Pearl, I realized that no, I should take comfort in it, because this is not the first time that someone has lent me their good name. It's not the first time. It's the first time a famous person had lent their good name. But when I went to college, my English teacher, Mrs. Cathcart, wrote me a letter. She was a Spelman graduate, vouching for me. That was her good name signed on the bottom of that paper meant as much to her as Oprah's good name means to her. And when Mrs. Cathcart gave me her good name, I felt loved. I didn't feel anxious. I didn't feel intimidated. And I just had to realize that, this is the same thing. And I just like when I went to college, I wanted to make Mrs. Cathcart proud. I felt the same way with Oprah. I was like, I'm going to do a good job. I'm going to do a good job. I'm going to make her proud. And I just learned I took it forward with me that way.
That just brought tears to my eyes. I love that so much. Wow. Oh my goodness. I love you.
Me, you. I gotta put my glasses back on though. Y'all have to forgive this glare. But
I know I've got my ring light glaring on me, so it looks like I'm being examined by aliens. I want to close by one of the most delightful things that I think you have ever done as a writer, and it's one of the most delightful things I think anybody has ever done in this novel, Leaving Atlanta, which is such an incredible book, which is a novel about children. It's told from the point of view of children growing up in Atlanta in the 80s while the Atlanta murders were happening. While
that book is funny. That one is funny.
There is, You write very funny books about serial killers and wrongful incarceration.
About childbirth, incarceration, bigamy.
You just laugh a minute with these subjects. And of course, you grew up in Atlanta during that time as a child, and yet you find, what I love about it is that the focus and the intimacy of what really was mattering to those kids at that time, even though there was this truly horrifying thing happening in the world, and children they knew were being disappeared. And but anyway, in that book, there's this moment, and I've brought this up to you before because I love it so much, but you wrote yourself in as a character in this novel, and what I love and what I delight about it is that it's not like a thinly veiled autobiographical coming of age novel. Like, you created your own fictional characters, but there is a character named Tayari Jones in this book, and she shows up like only a couple times, and it's your name, and it's obviously you, and you just pop her in there, kind of like the way Hitchcock used to show himself walking across the screen in the backdrop of the movie. But this is the line, and I laughed out loud when I read it. You're just a little girl. I think the age of the kids, it's 5th grade. Is that right? 10 years old. So it says, Tayari Jones is sniffing rubber cement and could use some adult supervision.
I really used to sniff. Didn't you sniff rubber cement as a child?
Who doesn't? Oh my God, the best.
Yeah, you get a little
you
buzz.
Make boogers out of it too.
You didn't know it was a buzz. Yes. Yeah, I had fun with that, because one of the things, I think the reason Leaving Atlanta is the funniest of my books is because childhood is a predicament. Serial killer or no serial killer, you still have the predicament of childhood. And as a writer, you're writing from the safety of having survived childhood. So you can be a little light and flip, because I'm an adult. I made it through to the other side.
Yeah.
And it was just fun. I used to have a lot of real people in that book. That book used to be populated with small moments of people that I knew in real life.
Yeah.
And I happened to mention it to my editor, and they just jumped on the brakes. They were like, ah!
No, you can't do that.
And I was like, why not?
I think one of the great joys of being a novelist, though, is I love to sprinkle my friends' names into the books, not as real characters, but if there's a business in the book and the restaurant's got a name on it, I'll choose a friend's last name. Like, it's just like a little Valentine that you can.
I agree. I personally think it's cute.
I love it. It makes me very, very happy. So, my dear, you're just the best. And the question that I had and why I wanted to do, will you ever, do you think you'll ever write a memoir? Because I, look at her face. Because I want to know about that little girl sniffing rubber cement in the room.
Just call me.
Can she get her own book one of these days?
Just call me. Just call me. I'll tell you all about it. Oh no, I'll never write a memoir. Oh.
Really?
Nope.
That was a violently clear answer that you gave. Like, really, tell me why, as somebody who's constantly exposing herself, tell me why you won't do it.
One, you know what? Also, I don't know how. As a novelist.
Now look at my face.
No, as a novelist, when I have a problem with the story as a novelist, I fix it by having the people do something else.
Right.
When I do write nonfiction autobiographical pieces, which is rare, I have to work so hard because I keep thinking, I know what would make this good. I can just make these people do something different. So
that doesn't stop a lot of memoirs.
But thank you for asking.
Well, look, I will read anything that you write.
I will read anything that you write. Hey, when the world gets back to normal, come visit.
I will do it. I would love that. I would love that so much. I would love to see your Atlanta, and I would love to hang out with you in person. We've done this a couple times online, and it's so fucking fun. You are the greatest, and whatever. Oh wait, can you just tell us what's happening with this in terms of like movie, TV, because all of us want to see it. So you said something. You're running.
I can't hear you. What?
Are you not allowed to disclose?
Liz, are you freezing up? Hello? What's happening? Hello? I think we're having technical difficulties.
Okay, great. So now you all know, we're all up to date on that. Just tell us that someday we'll be able to see this acted out.
From your lips.
All right. That's good enough.
Okay.
Be well, my dear. I'll see you next time I see you, hopefully in the real world.
Thanks for having me, and watch your
And
nails.
everybody just send up a whole bunch of love. Let's get some hearts going. Thank you so much for being with us, everyone. There it is. See that? That's all people loving you. That's all real people loving you in the real world.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks, everybody. See you later. Bye.